Hi folks, Matt Easton here, Scholar Gladiatoria. So this isn't one of my usual sort of videos, this is something a little bit more personal. We were talking on the UK HEMA page, which has just gone past, this is on Facebook, the UK HEMA page. If you're looking for HEMA clubs in the UK, it's the place to go really. I noticed that we'd gone past 2,500 likes on the page, so I said, said to people, why don't you post underneath and talk about how you discovered HEMA, assuming that you discovered HEMA, assuming you know what I'm talking about. There's lots of really interesting stories in there. Some people who I've known for 15 years or even more in some cases, showing how old I am now. I'm nearly 40. How shocking is that, guys? I'm literally on the cusp of 40. Am I having a midlife crisis yet? I'm not sure. I have started looking at sports cars and motorbikes on Auto Trader. But anyway, so I asked this question, and there's loads of really nice stories in there. Lots of people who've only been into HEMA in the last few months or a year or two, or that kind of, relatively short periods of time, as well as like people who I've known for years and people who I don't necessarily know for years but who've been doing HEMA for years. And my very good friend Fabrice Cugno, who makes the Warhammers and stuff, I'll just grab one because I've still got them here, I'm going to post them back to him soon, but makes all of this stuff. Very good Burgundian French friend of mine, commented underneath about borrowing a book, in fact, on arms and armour when he was a kid, or at least younger, and it had pictures in it of a fencing treatise, and this totally jogged a memory in my head, and I thought, that sounds really familiar. Okay, so it transpires we had the same book, but I have the English language version, he had the French, he actually borrowed it, the French language version. But it is this book, which I bought when I was, now I'm guessing, I think I was 11, and I was on holiday in Cornwall, which is in the southwest of England. Very nice part of England to visit if you're travelling around, and I was in an old sort of bookshop that had lots of antiquarian books and old books and second-hand books. And I was already, well, basically for my whole life I'd been massively obsessed with swords and armour and fencing and shooting and archery and everything like that. I found this book on arms and armour, immediately bought it. It was cheap. It might even have the price in here somewhere. Hold on, let's see. £2.50, there we go. So it was this cost me £2.50, and when I was about 11 years old, that would have been 1987 or 1988, that kind of, in fact it would have been 1988 now I think about it. And so in around 1988, I'm imagining 87, 88, 89, this kind of time, I bought this book. And inside it, it's a book by Aldo, I imagine it's pronounced Cimarelli in Italian, or Cimarelli if you're English, but Aldo Cimarelli, I imagine it's said. There we go, there's my Italian accent in full flow. Obviously an Italian, I would guess anyway. And it was published in fact I'm certain it's Italian because I can see from the publishing. It was published in Italy by a company called IGDA and Orbis Publishing as well in 1973. I was not yet born in 1973. Amazing to believe, I'm not that old. So this was a fairly old book when I bought it, but the important thing is, so it's got, fairly typical description of the development of armour and weapons, blah blah blah, and it's got some nice photos mostly from, in fact I think entirely from Italian collections. Most of it is Renaissance stuff, so 16th, 17th century. It's got some lovely rapiers in there, and as you see, it's actually got some really good photos. So the great book for me to get hold of at that kind of age, when, bearing in mind this is before the internet. I know it might be, many of my viewers won't be able to conceive of a time before the internet, but when I was, say an 11-year-old wanting to learn as much as possible about arms and armour, how did you do it? Books. You only had, books, and maybe if you were lucky you went to some, you went to a castle and there was a reenactment event and there were people there who could tell you stuff as well, but it was basically word of mouth and books and occasionally a newspaper article or something like that. So pre-internet, it was really difficult to find stuff. So whenever you found a book on arms and armour, it was like, wow, yes, brilliant, another book for my collection. And it has to be said now, a lot of these books about arms and armour are full of rubbish. A lot of what they say is actually not true. But you have to start somewhere, and before you can actually work out which bits are correct and which bits are rubbish. It's got some really nice harnesses in there. I have to say, that one in the red cloak, I was always particularly, try and get it in focus, I was always particularly taken with that, especially because he's got a longsword, and I was like, yeah, that looks really cool, hand and half sword. But the main reason I'm talking about this is because, look at what we've got there. We've got pages from treatises. Now, what are these from? I'm pretty sure, are these Maya or Paula Sector Maya? I'm actually not sure now. So this is where I show up my terrible knowledge of German sources. I think that's Maya, isn't it? Yeah, that's Maya's rapier, that's Maya's Federschwert longsword, and that's Maya's Dussac. But this was like mind-blowing stuff to me at the time, because it shows, rather than the, you know, the previous obviously lots of people know about HEMA now and it's easy to find on the internet, but pre-HEMA, pre-internet, all we knew was what was in movies, and when you read descriptions of medieval fighting in history books, they just kind of dismissed it as, you know, people bludgeoning at each other with swords. So to see these sort of fencers from the 16th century holding a two-handed sword, a side sword and a dagger, and a falchion type weapon, a dussac, to see them holding them in sort of fencing positions was like, wow, really eye-catching and really stylish poses as well, and that really caught my imagination. But the only descriptions it says is fencing with a rapier and left-hand dagger, dueler with a two-handed sword, or the on-guard position. Ox, I would say that is, but so it doesn't give you any information. At this point, I looked at those images and thought, wow, that's really cool that, you know, they're using medieval weapons but in sort of a stylish fencing way. It looks a little bit Japanese maybe, or a little bit kind of like modern sport fencing, or so I could see it was a developed fencing system, but there was no more information there at all. If it had said, these are from the fencing book of Joachim Meyer, or Paula Sector Meyer, whichever they're from, I think it's Joachim Meyer, and then I would have, you know, that would have stayed in my brain, and maybe I would have started researching HEMA earlier, because funnily enough, you can find copies of Meyer and reproductions of Meyer around. So even at that time you could. This figure, I'm actually not sure what is that. That's not Marozzo, is it? Maybe it's the late version. That might be the 1568 version of Marozzo. I'm not sure. Viewers, feel free to chip in here. Is that Joachim Meyer or Paula Sector Meyer? I'm not sure. Is that the late Marozzo? I think it is. But anyway, they don't say any of that information here, so I had nothing to go on, and I wish they had. But great to have that memory jogged. Thank you, Fabrice. And also, thank you, if you're still alive, sorry if that's insulting, but if you're still alive, Aldo Cimorelli, molto grazie, because having these pictures were really useful to me as an 11-year-old. Cheers, folks. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, follow us on Facebook. You can buy t-shirts through Spreadshirt, support us on Patreon, or follow us on Pinterest. Thank you.